This is Sigma 16mm f1.4 for the Canon EF-M mount, and Sigma just released 3 new primes for the EF-M mount, including this one, the 16mm and 30mm and 56mm. And with Canon's 1.6 crop factor, that's roughly 25.6mm and 48mm and about 90mm. And I know that Sigma also makes these lenses for the Sony E mount, but this is a much bigger news for Canon users because the EF-M mount was in some desperate need of new lenses. And last year, a lot of people thought that the EF-M mount was completely dead, but Canon surprised us all with the M6 Mark II, and supposedly, I can't really confirm this, but apparently they're also working on the replacement for the M50 as well, so we'll have to see what happens this year. But out of the 3 lenses, I think the 16mm is the most important one because for the longer lenses, Canon already had the 32mm 1.4, and you could always adapt any EF mount lenses, but a 16mm prime is a new lens for any Canon APS-C cameras. And I bought this lens for my M50, which has been one of the most popular cameras in the past 2 years, and it's an extremely popular camera not just for photographers but also for YouTubers like myself or food and travel vloggers because of its portability and ease of use with the flippy touchscreen and Canon's great video autofocus. And 16mm will be a very useful focal length for those people. And Canon already has some other lenses that could cover that focal length, like the 15-45 kit lens and also the 11-22 super zoom. But these lenses have quite a limited aperture, and the maximum aperture on these lenses are 3.5 to 6.3 on the kit lens and 4 to 5.6 on the 11-22. And going from that to 1.4 is going to be a huge jump. And because vloggers in public spaces can't always be filming in the most optimal lighting conditions, so 1.4 aperture is going to be a game changer for those people. So let's have a closer look at the hardware, and I'm going to mount this on my M50, and let's take a look at some of the images and videos. When I first saw the pictures of this lens, I was a bit worried that it might be a bit too big and heavy for the camera, and it is a bit bigger and heavier than the other lenses, but it's actually not too bad, especially compared to most full-frame lenses that I'm used to, and it still feels pretty well balanced and not too front heavy. The build quality is pretty good and very appropriate for the price, and it also comes with a hood, which is nice. It's not weather sealed though, so you should avoid any intense humidity or dust, but you should be doing that with any cameras anyway. Not something you care about, but I noticed that Sigma included a manual for the Sony E mount, so a little more attention to detail would have been nice. It uses a 67mm filter thread, and if you're a video shooter, I would highly recommend getting a variable ND filter for this lens because unlike the kit lens, if you want to keep the aperture wide open at 1.4, you're going to need to block out the sun quite a bit when you're filming outside during daytime. I mean, if you're getting this lens for the aperture, it would be a great investment because otherwise why would you even get this lens, right? The autofocus works really well, and in terms of accuracy and speed, I didn't notice any difference from any other Canon lenses. The face tracking also works really well in video. The safe minimum focusing distance on this lens is about 5 to 6 inches, so even at this focal length, you're going to be able to get some really nice background blur. The focus ring also feels quite nice. It's nicely dampened, but it's not too heavy, it's not too loose, and it feels just about perfect. So compared to the kit lens and the 11-22, which you'll be filming mostly at f4 and higher, the 1.4 aperture is going to be the biggest selling point for this lens. With the bigger aperture, you're going to be filming at much lower ISO, which will result in much cleaner and sharper images, as you can see here. Obviously, you get more range with the 11-22, and if your style is to show as much background as possible, then I think the 11-22 still has a place. But if your goal is to improve your image quality, I think the Sigma is the obvious winner. Some people might be worried about the lack of image stabilization on this lens, but based on my experience, the Canon internal digital stabilization makes a much bigger difference than the lens stabilization on this lens mount. With the equivalent focal length of 25.6mm, when you turn on the digital stabilization, it crops into something like 28mm, but as long as you put the camera on a GorillaPod or a monopod, I think you'll be able to manage it. This is also a great lens for photography because there's no other lens like it. You might even be able to do some nice astrophotography with this lens. When it comes to image quality, well, there's really not much to report because it performs really well. And if you want the most optimal performance from corner to corner, the lens performs best around f4 to f8, but even at 1.4 it does perform pretty well and you're not going to have much issues with it. So that's about it for me today. The Sigma 16mm f1.4, I think it's going to be a very popular lens for a lot of people. And if you are interested in getting one, check out the link down below. And if you have any more questions about the lens, just leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.